Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I kind of wanted to talk about something that would be a little bit more fun here, and that would be, I guess, Shane's reaction to, I guess who Rick Grimes is now. Now, again, we don't know who Rick Grimes, has become, during the story of the ones who live, because he could be a different person. I'm assuming he's not going to be, but there will be some differences here and there, but I think we all know Rick pretty well. So it was more just this shot right here that I saw of Rick yesterday. And then, I've seen some comments from you guys of just kind of saying that, imagine, what Shane would say if he saw Rick right now. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about Rick's journey overall and what Shane would think of Rick at this point and talk about some of that, because I think that could be kind of fun here. So before we go any further, obviously, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. I will be doing my Q&A video later on today. So I'll be getting to that right away. We're only 4 days away until this show premieres. The show is so close at this point, and really, in my head, it's only 3 days away, because 3 days from now, it's the 24th, and I'll just be kind of waiting until nighttime or whatever to probably watch the episode. Though I don't know, I don't know if I want to. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep, honestly, that entire night, knowing that I can actually watch the episode. And yeah, that's going to be, I don't know what I'm going to do there, but yeah, I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, we're 4 days away until the ones who live is here. And so we're basically, what's exciting about it is, it kind of feels like it's already here at this point, just because once we watch episode 1, then we'll have to wait for episode 2, and we're just kind of within the weeks of it airing right now. And so it's just it feels good to have The Walking Dead back, to have something so insane in terms of Rick and Michonne coming back. It's something that it's kind of hard to remember, how we all felt for years of just waiting for any sort of news on the Rick and Michonne show, because it started off as a Rick movie trilogy, and I will say, I do think Michonne was always going to be a part of it. What I've always said, when they first announced the Rick movie trilogy, I always said that the first movie would be about Rick, and then Michonne would probably show up in a post-credit scene in that first movie, and then she would be in the second movie, and that second movie would focus a lot more on Rick and Michonne. Probably the story that we're getting right now, though I do feel it would probably be a mix of a lot of it here. And yeah, I think things would be moved around and whatnot, because I know that the story has changed. Gimple has been saying that the story has changed from what he originally had. I think that, what was on The Walking Dead, the things that we saw on that show, a lot of that is still obviously going to be playing a role here in this show. But a lot of the, what that first movie was going to be and what the plot was going to be of that movie has changed quite a bit, because I think that they're going to be obviously focusing more on Rick and Michonne reuniting. And that was probably going to be a big part of the second movie story, right? And so I'm sure everything is kind of, all combined and whatnot. And I think that, again, they probably have a bigger story here. I think they do. And so it's just exciting. We've been waiting for so long for this moment here, and we're only a couple days away. And then we get to watch the very, very first episode of this show. And I really cannot wait. I'm so excited to watch this, to be doing reviews, and then all the videos to break down everything from the episode afterwards. That's the stuff that just makes the show so fun to watch, obviously, from episode to episode or week to week, right? And that's where I wanted to get into this here. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about Rick Grimes and I guess the overall Grimes story and stuff since season 1, because a lot has obviously happened since then. And what would Shane's reaction be to seeing Rick in a place like this? If it was possible for him to somehow see Rick and how far he's come from episode 1, or not episode 1, but since season 1 and season 2, right? What would he think? Obviously there'd be a bunch of questions on a lot of things, but it is really kind of insane. And a lot of it is because of the CRM outfit. It just looks so incredible. This looks so much better than anything that they had in World Beyond, The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, any of the spinoffs, anything with the Civic Republic military uniform. This is the best that we've seen, and it just looks absolutely incredible. And it's so insane to think that Rick, just going back to season 1, and just he was in a sheriff uniform and all of that, and now he's a Civic Republic military soldier here. That I find absolutely just it's crazy to just think of his journey. And I feel like Shane, out of all people, is the perfect person to really look at Rick and be like, wow, you've come this far, because Shane knew Rick going back to when they were basically kids, right? They knew each other for a while, and they obviously they were police officers together and whatnot. They sort of started the apocalypse together in that sense, and obviously things went really wrong. But when you just look at who Shane was and what he tried to teach Rick and everybody, it's been a thing that we've talked about forever, right? Like Shane, he was right. Like he was right. When you go back to those first couple of seasons, he was right about, his approach to everything. It's just that it was so not what anyone wanted to do, because obviously it was just different because of this is a new world now and how do you survive. And it was just so different from the way that they lived previously, right? And if you just if you think about everything just in general, like I feel like Rick had a harder time adapting to, I guess, this new world than like characters like Daryl and Shane, right? Like I think they adapted pretty quick. And I think from a lot of other characters' point of view, I think they can kind of understand Rick's journey. So I think a lot of other characters' points of view are characters like us. I feel like, well, I guess that depends too. It depends on kind of who you are as a person. I think that's why The Walking Dead is such an amazing show, is because when you first watch the show and you see how these characters are surviving, you kind of relate with like this character or this character, and it's all based off of who you are and how you would survive in the apocalypse, And I think for a character like Shane, he adapted pretty quick, and I think he really saw a lot of issues with how Rick was trying to lead and a lot of that. And I think that's why it just, it took a lot out of him to try and teach Rick a lot of that. Obviously, a lot of the Lori drama and stuff like that, definitely clouded a lot of his his mind on everything. And I think that just obviously it led to his downfall, which is definitely unfortunate, because he would have been, I still think if it wasn't for all of that, if that stuff didn't get in the way of Shane and Rick, Shane would probably still be alive to this day, because I think that he was somebody that, although I guess that's the kind of thing, like that's also been an argument throughout the years. Like, those that can survive don't, and those that can't survive do, right? Like that was sort of Morgan's whole thing, was like the weak will keep living on, and it's just, that's the hardest part about it all, right? And I mean, I guess you could also argue that they are probably the stronger characters, right? Like Morgan, Rick, a lot of the characters that I've just learned so much that were once very weak and couldn't make these really difficult decisions, like they're still around for a reason. A lot of characters like Shane and whatnot, they were killed off because of just who they were and just sort of their approach to everything. So it's all sort of up for debate, but I still think that Shane overall, his approach and whatnot was right. And I think that he really tried to teach Rick a lot throughout, a lot of those first two seasons there. He really focused on trying to just get him ready for the world here, because it's a new world now, right? And I think that if he could see Rick right now, it would just be so insane, and like it would be so cool to see, you know what I mean? And that's what I mean. I hope that there's stuff like that in this show, like in The Ones Who Live, where Rick talks about Shane again, or just any other characters. Like I don't know if he would bring up Shane, though obviously he still thinks of Shane, right, because of his final episode on The Walking Dead. So he could come up again, like he could actually bring Shane up again. It's just that it would have to kind of make sense with the story. Maybe just being a CRM soldier and just being in this sort of place in general reminds him of when he used to do this before the apocalypse, right? Like maybe there's something there. I think that would be really cool. I think Rick, obviously, he knows how to handle himself in a situation like this, and I just think that it would just be honestly really kind of incredible to see. Like it's just, I think the transformation of Rick Grimes is just something that I really do want to take a longer time just sort of breaking all of that down, focusing on who he's become over the years, because he's been through a lot, right? And for the first however many years, and that's the thing too, for the first 8 to 9 seasons, really, Carl was his motivation. And in his final episodes, he didn't really have a lot of motivation. Like obviously he has Judith now and Michonne, but like Carl was always his motivation, right? And I think his last episodes there, we kind of saw it, right, in his scene with Daryl there, his last scene with Daryl, really, where he was like talking about this is what Carl would have wanted, this and that, and he was still living by Carl, right? And I think even to this day, it would be kind of cool to see if Rick is still in that place or not. Like, is he still living by what his son would have wanted, right? I do think that Carl is going to come up in The Ones Who Live. They will talk about him. Like, I think it makes sense to actually bring him up, but Rick is also in a new place now, and so I think that he does have to have new motivations, right? Like, obviously, finding Michonne, Michonne finding Judith. And we've seen that. We've been actually seeing that for a bit now, since the final episode of The Walking Dead with like the phone, like obviously there's things of like Michonne and Judith and whatnot. So like we can see his new motivation now. Like it is his family. And so we're just, this is going to be a different Rick Grimes, and his journey that he's been on, I think Shane would honestly be really impressed with. I think if Shane saw who Rick was to this day, because he's been back and forth, like Rick was basically Shane in season 5, right? But he obviously calmed down a bit afterwards, and then obviously things, got really bad for him again, and then he kind of calmed down for a bit. And now what's he been through? Obviously he's been through quite a bit, if it's been like 10 years or something like that. Like it's been a very long time, right? So that's the stuff that I'm very, very interested in. I'm so interested in just what this story is going to be about, because we can view Rick Grimes in totally different ways. And so I'm just so excited about that. I'm really excited for this story to keep continuing on, because I think that there is still so much story to tell, especially with the CRM. I think the CRM is such a big part to all of this here that it's worth telling all of that and getting into a lot of that. Like, especially if there's stuff that connects to the beginning of the apocalypse and everything. And if Rick was, very important in sort of fixing all of that, I think it's very, very important to tell that story, just because of, first of all, the whole legacy of The Walking Dead. It would just be a really epic story. It really would. It would be the perfect zombie apocalypse story. And that's kind of how The Ones Who Live feels to me, to be honest. Like, based off of the trailers, based off of the sort of tone of this show, it really feels like a different era of the zombie apocalypse. Obviously, that's because we're in a place that has like, over 200,000 people or whatever. But it really feels like, they could actually tell a really, really incredible story here. They're doing so much promotion for this show. Like, it's honestly kind of insane how much promotion they're doing. Like, it's everywhere. Like, on all the morning talk shows and everything, like, they're doing so much press for this show right now. It's really incredible to see, because they really didn't do a lot of this for Dead City and for Daryl Dixon, right? But they used to do this with The Walking Dead a long time ago. So I think that this show here is really incredible. Really I do think it's going to get a season 2, because there is that, I made a post on Twitter, and there was a quote here by Andrew Lincoln. He was asked, do you look at The Ones Who Live as a chapter to a story or a bow that ties up loose ends? And Andrew Lincoln responds with, I'd like to think both. I like to think that it would exist as its own thing, but with a ... afterwards. So I think that that's really what this is. And I think that's why there is sort of a conclusive feeling to this, in a sense, right, for the Rick and Michonne story. And I think that's why they're focusing a lot on what this story is, because this story is focused on reuniting Rick and Michonne. And so it's really going to serve as just that. Like, it's going to be like, this is, these two characters are going to be getting reunited. And I think they're going to introduce other stuff with the CRM, get into a lot of that, but I don't think that's going to wrap up in this show, because I think it's too big to wrap up in this show, especially when you're focusing on Rick and Michonne reuniting, because a lot of the, early reviewers and stuff have been saying that by the time you watch episode 3 and 4, it really feels like, everything is just starting. Like, it feels like everything is just getting going, and that the CRM stuff hasn't really, they haven't really got into a lot of it. And it really is like, this is the start of something. That's kind of how it feels. And there's no way they're wrapping it up in 6 episodes without it feeling insanely rushed. And I don't think they're going to do that. Again, I think they're focusing more on the Rick and Michonne aspect to it. And I think that that's how they're going to introduce everything here, to sort of set up a season 2 or a part 2 or whatever. And I think Andrew Lincoln's comments here are perfect. He says, I'd like to think both. I like to think that it would exist as its own thing, but with a ... afterwards. So basically, you can watch this as its own story, but it's probably going to end in a way or whatever. Like, there's a ... afterwards, because there's a, there's still something else kind of thing. And, it could continue on. And because they haven't really been saying a lot of stuff, and I know AMC really, they would want a season 2 and all that. I think it is going to get that. I think they're going to be like, yeah, let's do a season 2, because this show has been absolutely incredible. And then I feel like that's going to be a really exciting part to, the next part of the story is like, well, now what do we do? How do we, make this way more exciting for everyone else? Because Rick and Michonne are now together. And depending on how this season ends, again, like, there's been a lot of discussion on like, will Rick die or Michonne die? And I guess I could talk about that in a separate video because it's possible, I guess. Like, it depends on how this ends, you know, and that's the thing with Andrew Lincoln. Like, he's been joking around that, like, well, what if Rick dies in the final episode or whatever, right? It's a little, you know, scary with him talking about things like that because what if that does happen, right? Like, what if, I don't know, for me, though, I just don't believe it because you're spending all this time finally finding Rick and then what, he just dies and there's no reunion with Daryl or anyone else. To me, that is just way too much. Like, that is way too much. I think people would be so upset about that. So I don't think it's going to happen because that just, again, it just really makes no sense at all. And so anyways, yeah, you know, The Ones Who Live obviously is airing in a couple of days here. It would be so cool to see, you know, how Shane would react overall to who Rick is now, you know, to just, I guess, just seeing him in the Pacific Republic military outfit. I mean, it's not even like Shane, to be honest. Like, imagine Daryl's reaction. Like, just all of them looking at Rick and seeing him in that CRM uniform, like with the red light and everything, they would just be like, what? Like, what is going on here, right? So that's what's really exciting about all of this. Like, that's the thing. That's what people really like about this show right now, is it is actually exciting, and it's not just the characters and like the storyline. It's all of the small things with the story. It's like the outfits look cool. The setting is very cool. Just like everything about it, the whole tone of the show, everything about it. It's so different from The Walking Dead, but is very obviously still in that same spirit. And it's just, yeah, obviously it's very exciting. But I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post your thoughts down below. Post your excitement for episode 1 and I guess the return of Rick and Michonne. What are your predictions for this episode? Also, what do you think Shane's reaction would be to seeing Rick in a CRM uniform and just, you know, who he is to this day? Post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video and I'll see you guys in the next one.